The deadline for the shutdown of IDP camps in Maiduguri in the northern Nigerian state of Borno is drawing closer with a December 31st deadline. As expected, there are national and international concerns about the plight and safety of thousands of people displaced by the long-running conflict in Borno State and the northeast region as a whole. More than 10,000 households are still living in IDP camps within Maiduguri, and they are at risk of forced resettlement. Amnesty International has said attacks by Boko Haram and ISWAP and human rights violations by the military still continue in the region. Only yesterday, there were some bombing incidents in the region when insurgents fired rockets just as President Muhammadu Buhari was about to visit the state. I have with me now Mala Isa Umar Gusau, who is the Special Advisor on Media and Publicity to the Governor of Borno State. Mala Isa, thank you very much. Welcome to the Arise interview.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Special Advisor, it was a bit of a surprise for Nigerians to hear that IDP camps are being closed in Maiduguri. Why are the Borno State government closing IDP camps when, as far as we can see, the war against Boko Haram has not ended?
Well, the issue of closure of IDP camps has been going on for a very long time. I am sure you are aware that there have been a lot of camps have actually been closed in previous attempts. Maybe this time around it just became an issue. Otherwise, is an part of the international best practices in humanitarian crisis is camps merger and safe and voluntary resettlement. Now, the problem with the camp is that a lot of the IDP camps have become very, very serious problems. If you were to go to assess the situation of the IDP camp in Muna, for instance, believe me, you would wonder whether human beings are actually the ones staying there. So what the governor has been saying is that resettlement houses have been built. About 9,850 resettlement houses have been built, and then some of these communities are safe for reoccupation. Normally, before any resettlement is done, committees are set up, made up of the military, some humanitarian experts, the state government officials, to assess the risk there. And then after which some clearing is done, and then reconstructions are done, basic amenities are brought back before the issue of resettlement. So what the governor did was to give three options, and he did that right in front of the IOM, the International Organization of Migration. He said most of these IDP camps are actually public schools. Now, we want to close them, but anybody who wants to remain in Maiduguri could remain in Maiduguri and will be supported to do that. We'll be giving money to rent houses, we'll be giving support, to carry on with livelihoods. And then those who want to return to any of these newly built houses will be given the basic things that they would require in terms of their livelihoods with which they could live, in other places. And then the third option was the relocation. So a lot of people, and then Malam Mahmoud, I believe you are the one there, you'd recall that we have had instances in the past, even at the peak of the Boko Haram crisis, when IDPs were so agitated that they wanted to defy the then more severe security situation to go back to Bama. If you remember, we had a violent protest when some people said they must go to Bama. So there is a serious agitation, so much that we were having instances of IDPs returning to some of these communities without anybody knowing. There was a particular camp that we woke up and discovered that a lot of people had already returned to Damasak, and at that time it was not even safe to go back there. So the governor had to ensure that they were forced back because of the concern of safety. But now that we have ascertained the situation, and then there is this conviction that these places are safe, reconstructions have been done, and then the governor feels it's okay for a lot of people to go back. So basically that is the situation. It's not just about, it's a voluntary one, and then there is a serious backing for support. And then Malamud, you'd recall that about 18 communities have been resettled between 2019 to date. Now, all these communities that have been resettled, you talk about Banki, Damasak itself, Mongono, Kukawa, Konduga. Up till now, we have not had any incidents in most of these places. Banki now, they even operate at night. So, when the governor wanted to resettle people in Baga, we had similar concern. The international community, people came out and said, look, this was a wrong move. And then, by Allah's grace, Baga is picking up. When he wanted to resettle Banki, there was the same concern, but today Banki is fine. You would recall that there was a meeting by the international community, including the UN officials in Banki. So, and then most of these resettlements, most of these towns that were rebuilt, there is the participation of some members of the international community in rebuilding these communities, for which IDPs are being resettled. So sometimes you don't understand. Some people can be speaking from both sides of their mouths, but it's part of the complexity of humanitarian situation.
You said something about the situation in the IDP camps, that it is terrible. What makes it terrible, really? What makes the situation in the IDP camps terrible?
When you have a place where an entire, a combination of 2-3 local government areas, are populated. Just for instance now, as proactive as Saudi Arabia, if you were to go for Hajj or you go for Umrah, and a number of pilgrims are gathered within a particular location, maybe less than 1,000, you would see a lot of mess, a lot of heap of rubbish coming up, because when people are gathered, people are bound to produce waste. Unfortunately, the IDP camps, like we know, it's placed that by itself, by design, the IDP is supposed to be a temporary relief camps where people are supposed to to go there, get some relief, and then transit from that camp to other places. That's supposed to be the international best practice. So when you gather people from local government areas, you have about 10, 15,000, sometimes as many as 100,000 people located in one place. These people don't go anywhere. All they will do is to eat, sleep. Naturally, waste will be produced. A lot of things will happen, and then if you are not careful, you are going to have other humanitarian crises. We have had instances where we had cholera in some of the camps, and right now what is happening in the camps, there are prostitution rings, there are drug abuse, there is a lot going on in the camps. Some of the things that we don't even want to say, we are even ashamed to say, in government. And then the governor thinks that we cannot continue to allow this. More so that the IDPs themselves really, really want to go back to their communities. And with or without government, a lot of them are already going back. So the best government could do, is to facilitate them, to support them, to give them all the backings that they need so that they could go and live dignified lives. And then the state government has a monitoring mechanism. There's a committee under the Commissioner for Agriculture. The committee has a lot of experts who are who have been in this humanitarian crisis for some time. They monitor these resettlement communities. Where there is a need for any intervention, that committee responds immediately. So the whole idea of the governor is, look, and what the governor's experiment is gradually working. If you look at Banki now, Banki has picked up. Bama has picked up. Mafa is gradually picking up. Cross-Kawa is picking up. Kukawa is picking up. So the governor feels Baga is picking up. Let's experiment. The governor has so far released close to 10 billion naira to revamp the economies of these communities where people have resettled. He feels that somebody that has been in isolation in the last 10 years, as an IDP, should be allowed to reflect on his or her life, to look at the journey so far, to reflect on the things that somebody has missed, and then how to pick up the pieces of their lives.
So there was this interesting angle to the story when the governor said, okay, we will continue immediately after a short break, Special Advisor. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I am Mahmoud Jega. In spite of government efforts, the security situation in Nigeria is still very challenging. The lingering conflict between herders and farmers in north-central Nigeria has been rated 6 times deadlier than the Boko Haram insurgency. And Maiduguri in Borno State is widely considered as the epicenter of the terrorist group's influence in the region. And with the government closing down IDP camps in the city, there is concern about the welfare of some of the people living there. I still have with me the Special Advisor on Media and Publicity to the Governor of Borno State, Malam Isa Umar Gusau. Malam Isa, thank you very much. I was about to ask a question before we went on break. The Governor, Professor Zulum, was quoted as saying to some international CSOs and NGOs that they should stop giving free food to the IDPs. Is that not a cruel thing to do? Stop people getting free food?
No, I think that's not true. The governor had a meeting with the INGOs on Monday in Maiduguri. The meeting was widely reported, and then I think they are all on the same page. They clearly understood what he was talking about. What the governor is saying is that there are 11 communities that he identified that a lot of money has been popped in, close to 4 to 5 billion, into that community. Individuals were given, individual households was given about 200,000 naira for a small scale business with some quantum of food that could be used for about 2 or 3 months. A majority of these people are farmers, some of them are petty traders. The governor said, look, let's allow these people to do businesses. Let's experiment. Let's look at the case of Banki, for instance. The case of Banki, the case of Baga, they are beginning to pick up. Businesses are beginning to rise because of that. So let's not begin to allow these people to queue up and start giving them cups of rice. Take their photographs, and spread them. Let's give them support with which they could rely on themselves, with dignity, and because a lot of them really want to do businesses. Let's give them money, let's allow them, and then let's monitor them. That's what the governor said. There are still existing IDP camps in Maiduguri. Even at the moment, there are some outside Maiduguri. The governor said, continue your humanitarian activities in these camps. In fact, we actually want you to continue what we are doing here. We want you to continue all the interventions there. But for these 11 communities, allow us to experiment. Let us guide them, to recover from the problems that they have had. Let's allow businesses to rise, because the fact of the matter is that giving people food on the queue is not sustainable. We have had instances where the UN, the humanitarian partners themselves, tell us sometimes that they cannot sustain certain things. There are instances where you find a particular NGO providing food to a particular community, and they write to the state government, informing the state government that within so period we cannot afford to provide that food. The state government would have to come in, at that point. So there is donor fatigue. And then we know that humanitarian crises, unfortunately, are things that happen almost all over the world. It's not just about Nigeria. Even in Nigeria right now, it's not just about Borno. Right now, before, Borno was at the peak of the humanitarian crisis. Right now, you have humanitarian crises in at least 7, 8, or even 9 or more states. So now the problem is that the more crises, the less attention Borno will get. And then, in the first place, it's not something that anybody is happy with. So the government feels before we get to a time where our people completely rely on food aid, and then the food aid stops, and then you have another major problem. Let us support them to be on their own. Basically, that is the position.
That's very interesting. Well, it's only yesterday the president was in Borno, and from the reports we all got, just before he arrived, some rockets were fired into an area near the airport. So how improved is the security situation? Looks like it is still a bit precarious.
Well, there are challenges, and of course we know that dealing with insurgents is always a complex one, because the insurgents have the advantage of concealing their identities. They have that advantage over the military police. That's why dealing with terror is the most difficult thing on earth, because you could have the enemy right in front of you without knowing who the person is. So that is the complexity. And of course, you know that if you look at the terrorists, one of their major tools is propaganda. The terrorists use propaganda more than anybody. There are even instances where some terror leaders would record a video, a post-dated video. For instance, you could have, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 1 year you have a video of Shekau saying this is 2023. He could record that so that even after his death, he will still be useful, to his evil supporters, so that they could use the video to confuse the minds of people into believing he's still alive. So terrorists always want to take an advantage. Of course, they have their sources of information. They read the news. They have informants. So they were aware that the president was coming. So the aim was just to get the publicity, which unfortunately, they got. And then nobody can blame the media for not reporting that it happened. But that's exactly what the terrorists, want. All over the world, terrorists, no matter how you see them, they want to be seen, from the point of violence. They want to instill fear. They want to spread, what they believe in. You'd recall that when there was a country that this thing happened, somebody went to the mosque, and killed. I think it was in, I'm not sure of the country. I know it's Swaziland, I'm not sure. I know a woman is the president, of that country. Somebody went to the mosque, killed people, he recorded himself while doing it. Terrorists all over the world, whether you find them in whatever religion, they want to spread fear. They want people to panic. There's something they believe in. They believe in violence. They want to record that. They want to tell people that, look, we are still around. So that is basically, what they did. But that is not to say that everything is under control. The bottom line is that we have challenges. But if you were to compare the situation with what was there, 4 or 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, nobody was talking about, resettling people. We have resettled about 18 communities. By Allah's grace, we haven't had any incident, in any of these communities. 4 or 5 years ago, the situation was not like that. But then, there are still challenges. And like the governor said, if you remember, when the rocket was fired into town about, a few weeks ago, he did say that the military needed to wake up, because before you could fire a rocket, then you must be within a particular distance. And then I think that the military themselves should have anticipated that with information already on air that the president was coming, there could be that attempt by terrorists, to do that.
Is true.
There could have been, some effort to comb, whatever radius.
Thank you very much, Male Isa Umar Gusau. I'm sorry I had to interject. We are run out of time. Thank you very much, Special Advisor to the Governor of Borno State. We wish you all the best. Well, that's it for this edition of the Arrives interview. Do join us again next week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thank you very much for watching.